Before I get started, I want to thank Sage, Stephen, John, Francis, everyone for having me here today. I recently hosted a conference, so I understand how much hard work goes into these sorts of things, and you guys have done brilliantly. So can we give them a very quick round of applause? One of my favorite quotes is, "Not my circus, not my monkey." I've hacked it a little bit, so when someone comes to me with an awesome idea that's outside of my scope, I'll say, "Sorry, that's not my circus. But let me find out whose circus that is for you." I have 3 rings inside my big cup. First, I work in open policy, working to establish open licenses as a default for content produced by governments, institutional organizations, foundations. The Gates Foundation inspiring talk yesterday is a great example of open policy in action. In ring number 2, I consult on open business models. As Stephen mentioned yesterday, the importance of communities in medicine. Open business models treats customers as partners, as collaborators, increasing your reach and stepping away from business models based in scarcity and into business models based in abundance. And in the final ring, we recently launched Open Textbooks for Africa. This project was born out of last year's assembly, when I walked Brian Bott around the streets of Paris until I tired him out enough to give me an introduction to his uncle. What we're doing is introducing open-licensed textbooks to university students across Africa, not only importing and adapting textbooks, but also designing our own and showcasing African knowledge to the world. We're starting with an astronomy book, because currently all astronomy textbooks sold in Africa are printed with the north sky, so when they're in class, they literally have to flip the textbook upside down in order to reflect our sky. Every day I ask people, governments, organizations to open their knowledge, their creation, their idea to the world. My job doesn't work without sharing, gratitude, or trust. But we need to talk about sharing. Not drivers and feeding and sheltering kind of sharing. Sharing isn't about building technology to replace your mom. What's missing is the rewards of why we share. Airbnb says they're all about sharing. It defies terms like the rental economy and the lease economy. Airbnb says their model is commerce with the promise of human connection. David Brooks countered in his New York Times piece, The Evolution of Trust, with the warm connection of the world sharing obscures the fact that most of this activity is spurred by distressed economic conditions. He goes on to say, you might as well think that people take telemarketing jobs, do so because they love the art of conversation. The real sharing economy is one built around goodwill, gratitude, mutual benefit, not commerce. Ryan Merkley, Creative Commons CEO, further expands, saying sharing shouldn't require compensation. If you're paying for it, it's not actually sharing, it's just a service. And the truth is, we're built for sharing. In Adam Grant's book, Give and Take, Grant argues that those who give first are often best positioned for success later. When researchers studied across social networks, they found that when one person gave, others were more likely to follow. That the presence of a single giver is enough to establish a norm of giving. These concepts are familiar to us here, those involved in open science, open data, free culture communities. We tend to think of sharing as a generous act. But there's a strong case that it benefits the sharer over time, often indirectly. In fact, this is the real power of sharing, the benefits multiplied for the giver, the receiver, and society. But in order to share, we first have to accept that selfishness, disloyalty, and trustworthiness all exist in equilibrium. In life, you have to put your trust in many unseen relationships and people, and we rely on these relationships without thinking about them. Where I live in South Africa, the division of low trust and high trust communities remains painstakingly divided. High trust environments are our friends, our families. This is where communication thrives, innovation booms, any stress or roadblock is easily resolved because we're operating from a place of trust. Low trust environments are those where communication breaks down and we assume the worst. There's little room for innovation when we spend our time safeguarding and controlling against potential risk. You probably figured out by now that I'm not South African. It's probably because I've said we need to talk about sharing a few times. So how did a Canadian end up all the way down in Cape Town? I rode my bike there. In 2010, I was part of a pack of 50 strangers, and we set off to ride across the beautiful continent of Africa. 155 days, 10 countries, and only 2 punctures later, we arrived in Cape Town. Only 2. Early in the trip, in Sudan, finished for the day, we had pitched our tents on the side of the road, and a guy comes running out of his house. Arabic being a particularly passionate and expressive language, we naturally assumed he was upset at the idea of 50 tents on his front lawn. What he was actually trying to do was invite us in for a meal. We're so used to assuming the worst in people that we forget their best. In South Africa, walled gardens are the norm, which I've never really understood. The risk of getting caught hopping over a wall is actually quite low, and the thing we built to keep people out suddenly protects them and makes us vulnerable. I'll say this in a different way. Someone once explained to me why you should never get into an armored car. Nobody's going to shoot at an armored car. Instead, they'll set the car on fire, or they'll kill the electrical system. They'll turn you into a sitting duck, and the system designed to keep people out will trap you in. When we engineer against potential misuses, we lock ourselves in. When we lock our ideas in, we limit them. We make our ideas vulnerable. What's changing in our world is the scale at which we're now required to trust. In the digital world, we're asked to trust many things with no reason to. We need to understand how we're manifesting our physical controls and taking them with us into the digital world. To manage the scale, to make our lives easier, we need systems. Systems with trust built in. When trust is built in, we stop worrying about who could rip us off, and instead we think about innovation. We think about what opportunities we can create. Trust does 3 simple things. It makes life more predictable, it creates a sense of community, and it makes it easier for all of us to work together. The truth is, we've been on a trajectory of trust technology for a long time. eBay's first sale was a broken laser pointer. They emailed the buyer to confirm that he understood that it was broken, and he responded, "Yeah, I know, I'm a collector of broken laser pointers." Everyone misses this slide, but this is a patent slide for a method of exercising a cat with a laser pointer. Open is Elon Musk, South African, breaking the mold and saying technology leadership is not defined by patents. He took down the patents off the walls at Tesla headquarters and said to us, "Help me change the world." Trust is blockchain that's built into banking, into vintage wine, into sneakers, into digital photographs, all verified by zeros and ones. If we remove the levers for manipulation and replace them with reputation systems, then trust is generated horizontally, threat is forgotten, innovation and creativity can thrive. Right now, we're working on a book at CC on open business models with case studies from around the world. For open business models, revenue generation is a means to an end and not the end itself. The end game isn't solely profit, but impact. Traditional business models start with exclusivity. They manufacture scarcity. Denying access to a good until money is paid. There is no impact without a financial transaction. Open business models, we start with inclusivity, participation, universal access. Impact is enabled up front, and revenue generation is what follows. Open removes artificial scarcity constraints, and instead we operate from a place of abundance. When I walk into a company interested in implementing an open business model, the first question is always, "Yeah, but how am I going to make money?" We've established 6 economic benefits using CC licenses in businesses. First, reduction of production costs. Eric from Seed Studio yesterday had in his slide faster evolutions with open hardware. You reduce transaction costs and legal uncertainty. It increases your speed of innovation. It supports your first mover advantage. It helps build your reputation as a company, and it promotes sustainability. One of the ways our makers build gratitude into our system is through the public domain. Copyright is designed to encourage, to incentivize creativity. But the term is limited because we recognize that some of what you create has been inspired by the creative works of others and ultimately belongs to everyone. Public domain allows for creators, and often their families, to benefit from the creation for a period of time before moving into the commons for new works to be created on the inspiration of your work. When Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's famous detective stories entered the public domain, his estate fought quite hard to keep Sherlock out, arguing that it would destroy the incentive to create. Fortunately, the judgment fell in our favor, and it is because of this and the public domain that we have to thank for Benedict Cumberbatch. We are richer as a culture because of the commons. Sherlock and many other works have been created thanks to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's creativity. To wrap up, what I want you to think about, what I want you to take home tomorrow, is what opportunities could be created in your world if you built from a system of trust. What would happen if you took the patents down off your walls? What innovation could you create if you let Benedict Cumberbatch into your life? Thank you.